Why are you staring in surprise, Cowboy? Don't you remember me? I'm your childhood love. He was born in a small village where the roads were dusty and the houses were made with simple bricks and tin roofs. Life there moved slowly, and people knew each other by name, by family, and by habit. The boy grew up surrounded by open fields, grazing animals, and wide skies that changed color every evening. From a very young age, he learned the value of hard work. His family did not have much, but they had honesty, discipline, and hope. As a child, he was quiet and observant. He did not speak much, but he noticed everything. He noticed how his father's hands were always rough from work, how his mother saved every coin carefully, and how dreams were often spoken in whispers, not loud voices. The village school was small, with broken desks and old blackboards, but for him, it was a place of wonder. Books felt like windows to a world far bigger than the one he lived in. That was where he met her. She was different from the other children, always curious, always smiling, and never afraid to speak her mind. While other children worried about games, she talked about places she wanted to see and things she wanted to learn. She believed that life could be more than what the village offered. From the first day, she chose to sit beside him, even though he barely spoke. They became close without realizing it. Every morning they walked to school together. Sometimes they shared one book between them. When he struggled with lessons, she helped him patiently. When she felt tired or sad, he listened quietly. Their bond grew naturally, like a plant that doesn't need attention to grow strong. After school, they often sat near the fields, watching the sun go down. They talked about their future in simple words. He wanted to earn enough to take care of his parents. She wanted him to succeed, even if she did not fully understand what success looked like yet. She believed in him without question. To her, he was already special. People in the village noticed their closeness. Some smiled, some joked, but no one thought much of it. They were just children after all, but deep inside, both of them felt that their connection was different. It was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and warm. As the years passed, life became harder. His family faced financial trouble. Work in the village was not enough and opportunities were rare. His father grew weaker, and responsibilities began to fall on his young shoulders. The dreams he once shared under the open sky started to feel heavy. He wanted more, but he also felt trapped. One evening, his father told him about a chance to work in the city. It was not easy work, and it meant leaving the village. But it also meant money, stability, and a possible future. The decision was painful. Leaving meant separating from everything familiar, especially her. When he told her, she tried to smile, but her eyes gave her away. She did not cry in front of him. Instead, she encouraged him. She told him that this was his chance and that he should not be afraid. Her words were strong, but her silence afterward was heavy. On the night before he left, they met near their usual spot. The air was calm, but their hearts were not. He promised he would return. He promised he would not forget. He promised that this was not goodbye, just a pause. She believed him because she wanted to. The next morning, he left the village with a small bag and big dreams. The city welcomed him with noise, crowds, and struggle. Life there was harsh and unforgiving. He worked long hours, faced rejection, and learned lessons the hard way. Slowly, he changed. His hands grew tougher, his mind sharper, and his heart more guarded. Letters became fewer. Calls became shorter. Life moved on, fast and demanding. Success did not come overnight, but it came eventually. With success came pride, confidence, and distance from his past. The village began to feel like a memory instead of home. Years passed. He built a new life, surrounded by people who knew him as a strong, successful man. Few knew the quiet boy he once was. Fewer still knew about the girl who believed in him before anyone else did. The promises he made were not broken intentionally. They were simply buried under responsibilities, ambition, and time. He told himself that one day he would return, but that day kept moving further away. One day, circumstances forced him back. A family matter brought him to the village he once left behind. As he arrived, everything felt smaller than he remembered, yet heavier. Memories rushed back with every step. The school, the fields, the quiet paths, everything was the same, yet different. He did not know that the past was waiting for him. He did not know that the girl he once left behind had grown, endured, and changed, just like him. He walked through the village unaware that his forgotten promise was about to stand in front of him, alive and strong. And that is where the story truly begins. The man walked slowly through the village, taking in the familiar sights and sounds. The streets were still narrow and dusty, with small shops lining the sides. Children ran about, playing games with sticks and balls, and elders sat in the shade, talking quietly. The village seemed almost frozen in time, yet everything carried a weight of change. He noticed the small school building he had once loved, the fields where he and she had spent long afternoons, and the tiny river that had reflected the sunlight just the way he remembered. As he walked, his mind wandered to memories he had long kept locked away. He remembered the laughter of the girl who had always waited for him by the field, the quiet conversations they had shared about dreams, and the promise he had made to return. Each memory felt bittersweet, sweet because it reminded him of a simpler, more innocent time, and bitter because he realized how far he had drifted from those days. He had come back with a purpose, a family matter that needed attention, but he could not deny the pull of the past. It was as if the village itself was calling him, reminding him of who he had once been. He walked past the marketplace, where vendors sold fresh vegetables, colorful spices, and handmade goods. The smell of warm bread from a nearby bakery filled the air, and he paused for a moment, letting the memories wash over him. Then, as he turned a corner near the village square, he heard a voice. It was soft but clear, carrying an unmistakable tone of familiarity. "Why are you staring in surprise, cowboy? Don't you remember me?" He froze. His heart skipped a beat, and for a moment he could not move. The voice was unlike anything he had heard in years, yet it was immediately familiar. He turned slowly, almost afraid to see who it was, and his eyes met hers. She stood there, taller than he remembered, confident and composed. Her hair had grown long, and her eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and calm. She was beautiful in a way that was quiet but impossible to ignore. She smiled slightly, the same gentle smile that had greeted him as a child. And in that moment, he realized with a shock that she was the girl he had left behind. She was the girl who had believed in him when no one else did. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in years, he felt small and unsure of himself. The city had made him strong and confident, but it had not prepared him for this. The past had returned, standing before him, alive and real. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "I thought you would remember me," she said softly. "After all these years, I thought you would." He swallowed hard, his throat dry. I do remember," he finally managed to say. He paused, struggling to find the words. "I didn't think, his voice trailed off. She laughed quietly, a sound that brought back a flood of memories. "You never were good with words, even as a child," she said teasingly. But there was no anger in her tone, only a gentle acknowledgement of the past. He wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, to apologize for leaving, to explain himself, but he did not know where to begin. The years of separation felt like a wall between them, taller and stronger than he could climb. And yet, standing there, he realized that no wall could erase the bond they had shared. They walked together slowly through the village, as if returning to the places of their childhood could somehow bridge the years of absence. She showed him the new school building, pointing out improvements and changes. He noticed how much she had grown, how confident she had become, and how the hardships of life had shaped her into someone strong yet gentle. As they reached the fields where they had once played, memories came rushing back. He remembered the afternoons spent chasing each other, the times they had sat under the old oak tree talking about dreams, and the quiet moments when they had simply watched the sun set. She sat down on the grass, patting the spot beside her. He hesitated, then sat, feeling the soft earth beneath him just as he had so many years ago. For a long time neither spoke. The wind rustled through the tall grass, carrying the familiar scents of the village, the smell of fresh soil, of wildflowers, and of the river nearby. It was as if time had folded and they were once again children sitting together, unaware of the future that awaited them. Finally, she spoke. "I have waited for this moment," she said quietly. "Not for revenge, not for blame, but to see you, to know that you still exist in this world I never left." He looked at her, his heart heavy with regret. "I am sorry," he said simply. "I never meant to forget, I never meant to leave you behind. Life just, it carried me away and He stopped, unable to finish. She nodded. "I know," she said softly. "We are not children anymore. Life changes everyone, but I wanted you to see me as I am now, not as the girl you left behind. I wanted you to remember, even if just for a moment, that there was someone who believed in you without question." He felt a lump in his throat. The years of success, the pride, the achievements, all of it felt hollow compared to the weight of her words. He realized that in his pursuit of a better life, he had lost touch with what truly mattered. The people who had shaped him, the memories that had guided him, and the love that had quietly waited for him. They walked further into the fields, sharing stories of the years apart. She told him about the struggles she had faced, the family responsibilities she had carried, and the ways she had grown stronger through hardship. He listened, humbled and amazed by her resilience. In return, he shared fragments of his life in the city, the challenges, the victories, and the moments of loneliness that had accompanied success. For the first time, he spoke openly about his fears, his regrets, and the weight of the decisions he had made. She listened patiently, her eyes never leaving his, her presence a quiet comfort. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fields, they sat in silence again. Words were no longer necessary. The past, the present, and the future seemed to converge in that moment. He understood that she had changed, that he had changed, and that their connection was no longer defined by promises or expectations, but by a shared history that neither time nor distance could erase. She finally spoke, breaking the silence. "I don't want to hold you back," she said softly. "We cannot go back to being children, we cannot relive the past, but we can remember it, we can honor it." He nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." She smiled, a mixture of sadness and warmth in her eyes. "And thank you for coming back. Not everyone does." They walked back toward the village together, the air around them filled with a quiet understanding. The marketplace was closing and the streets were calm. Children still played in the dust and elders still sat in the shade. But for them, the village felt different now. It was no longer just a place of memories. It was a place of reconciliation, a place where the past could meet the present without pain, and where the future could begin with clarity. As they parted that evening, neither knew what the coming days would hold. The man would return to his life in the city, and she would continue her life in the village. But something had shifted between them. The years of distance, the silence, and the unspoken feelings had finally found a moment of acknowledgement. He realized that seeing her, speaking with her, and understanding her journey had changed him. He no longer saw success as merely wealth or status. He saw it as the ability to live honestly, to honor relationships, and to carry the past with respect, rather than shame. She, too, felt a sense of closure. She had grown up waiting for a boy who had left, and she had learned to live without him. But seeing him now, seeing the man he had become, she felt a quiet peace. The bond they had shared as children was no longer about possession or longing. It was about recognition, respect, and gratitude for the role they had played in each other's lives. As night fell and the stars began to appear, they exchanged a simple farewell. There were no dramatic declarations, no promises of reunion. Just two people who had once shared a deep connection, meeting again in the quiet of life, and acknowledging it with honesty and grace. And as the man walked away from the village that night, he carried her words, her presence, and the memory of that encounter with him. It was a reminder that some connections do not fade, that some love does not die, and that sometimes, simply being remembered is enough. The girl watched him disappear into the distance, her heart calm, her mind clear. She had waited not for revenge, not for closure, but simply to witness the man he had become. And in that witnessing, she found peace, not just for him, but for herself. Life would continue for both of them, separate yet connected, shaped by the past but moving toward the future. And the fields, the village, and the memories would always remain, waiting silently for anyone who dared to remember. After their reunion in the village, the man found himself thinking about her constantly. Every memory, every detail of her face, her voice, and her presence had resurfaced with a clarity that surprised him. He realized that meeting her again had awakened emotions he had long buried under ambition and work. It was no longer just nostalgia, it was a deep understanding of what he had lost by leaving her behind. She, too, felt the weight of their past. Seeing him again brought back old feelings, but it also brought questions. How had he changed? Did he truly remember her, or was she just a shadow of a childhood memory to him? She had grown strong and independent, yet the part of her heart that had loved him as a child could not ignore his return. Over the next few days, circumstances allowed them to spend more time together. At first, it was casual, shared walks in the fields, conversations about the changes in the village, and visits to familiar spots from their childhood. But gradually, their conversations became deeper, more honest. They began to talk about the years apart, the choices they had made, and the paths their lives had taken. He spoke first, his voice quiet but earnest. "I never wanted to leave you behind," he admitted. "Every day in the city I thought about the promise I made to return, but life, it moved faster than I could keep up. I lost myself, and in doing so, I lost sight of what mattered most." She listened carefully, her eyes reflecting a mixture of understanding and sadness. "I know life can take people far away," she said softly. "I waited, yes, but not because I was clinging to the past. I waited because you mattered to me once, and I wanted to see who you became." For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable. Success and confidence had taught him how to navigate the world, but they had never taught him how to confront his own guilt and regret. Seeing her, hearing her words, he understood the depth of the impact his absence had caused. They spent hours sitting together under the old oak tree, the same tree where they had shared countless childhood dreams. He listened as she spoke about her struggles, the responsibilities she had carried, the challenges she faced without him, and the ways she had grown stronger through hardship. She did not speak with bitterness or anger. Instead, she spoke with honesty and calm, sharing her story as someone who had survived and thrived despite difficulties. He shared his own experiences, the hardships of city life, the loneliness behind the walls of success, and the constant pressure to achieve more. He admitted that he had often felt guilty for leaving, but he had buried those feelings beneath work and ambition. She listened without judgment, her presence giving him a rare sense of comfort. As the days passed, their conversations began to touch on deeper emotions. They discussed the moments they had lost, the missed opportunities, and the misunderstandings that had grown over the years. He confessed his fear of losing her entirely, not as a romantic desire, but as a fear of losing a connection that had shaped his very being. She, in turn, admitted that she had often wondered if he had truly remembered her. She spoke of nights when she had imagined his return, the questions she had asked herself about why he left, and the hope she had quietly held onto. Hearing her words, he realized that her strength had been forged in silence, her resilience built on patience and love that never demanded anything in return. One evening, they visited the small river near the village, the same river where they had once played and talked for hours as children. The water shimmered under the setting sun, and the familiar sound of flowing water brought a sense of calm. They sat on the riverbank, their feet brushing against the cool water, and for a while neither spoke. The silence was not empty. It was filled with memories, emotions, and the unspoken acknowledgement of their shared past. Finally, he turned to her, his voice low but firm. "I need to apologize," he said, "not just for leaving but for forgetting, for letting time and distance erase the bond we had. I was foolish, and I cannot take back the years I lost, but I want you to know that you have never left my mind." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both the pain of the past and the strength of the present. "I do not need apologies to heal," she said softly. "I needed you to see me, to remember me as I am now, not as the child you left behind. You have done that, that is enough." They spent the evening walking along the river, talking about small things, how the village had changed, the new school building, and the growth of local businesses. Yet beneath the surface, every word carried a deeper meaning. Each conversation was a step toward understanding, a step toward forgiveness, and a step toward acknowledging the connection that had never truly faded. As days turned into a week, the man realized that he was learning more from her than he had learned from anyone in the city. She had endured hardship without bitterness, faced challenges with courage, and grown into someone strong and independent. Her life was not perfect, but it was lived with integrity and resilience. He began to understand that love was not just about being together. It was about respect, understanding, and the ability to honor someone's journey. She, too, began to see him differently. The boy she had once known had grown into a man with depth and experience. He had made mistakes, but he had also learned, and that growth was evident in his words, actions, and presence. She realized that the man before her was not the same as the boy she had loved, yet he carried the essence of the person who had once been important to her. One afternoon, they visited the small school where they had spent their childhood. The classrooms were bright, the blackboards freshly painted, and the children's laughter filled the halls. As they walked through the corridors, memories came flooding back, times when they had shared desks, studied together, and whispered dreams of the future. Standing there, they both felt the weight of the years they had lost, but also a quiet gratitude for the connection that had survived. Sitting under the old oak tree once more, he spoke with sincerity. "I have realized something," he said. "Success, money, and recognition mean nothing if they come at the cost of the people who shaped you. I lost sight of that, but meeting you again has reminded me of what truly matters. You mattered then, and you still matter now." She smiled gently, her eyes warm. "And you matter too," she replied. "Not as the boy I knew, but as the man who returned, aware and respectful of what we shared. We cannot change the past, but we can honor it. That is what I have learned." In the evenings, they would often sit by the river, watching the sunset in silence. Words were not always necessary. Their presence spoke volumes about forgiveness, understanding, and the quiet power of shared history. The past, once a source of pain and longing, was now a bridge connecting them in the present. They began to speak about dreams again, not as children, but as adults who had faced life and learned its lessons. He spoke of hopes for a meaningful life beyond material success, of wanting to give back to the village, and of finding a balance between ambition and personal connection. She shared her own vision of helping others in the village, of supporting her family, and of living a life of purpose and fulfillment. Through these conversations, they discovered a new form of companionship. It was not the innocent love of childhood, nor was it the passionate love of youth. It was a deeper connection, one built on mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition of each other's journey. They laughed together, shared stories, and occasionally argued, but always with kindness and patience. One evening, as the stars appeared in the night sky, they sat together quietly. He turned to her and said, "I do not expect anything from you. I do not want to ask for your love or your forgiveness. I just want you to know that meeting you again has changed me. You have reminded me of who I am, who I was, and what truly matters." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the stars. "And you have reminded me that the past is not something to hold onto with pain. It is something to carry with gratitude. We have both grown, both changed, and both learned. That is enough." The night grew darker, but neither felt fear or sadness. Instead, they felt a quiet peace, a peace born from honesty, understanding, and the acknowledgement of the deep connection that had survived the years. They had faced the truth of their past, confronted regrets, and begun the process of healing. As the man prepared to leave the village once more, he realized that this time, he would leave not with guilt or longing, but with clarity and gratitude. She had taught him that love was not about possession or reunion. It was about recognition, respect, and the quiet power of memory. She stood at the edge of the village, watching him walk away. There was no anger, no bitterness, only a calm acceptance. She had faced the years of waiting with strength, and now she could move forward with her life, carrying the memory of their shared past not as a burden, but as a source of wisdom and resilience. The bond they shared had transformed. It was no longer a connection defined by absence or longing, but by understanding, forgiveness, and the quiet acknowledgement of their shared history. Both had grown, both had changed, and both had learned that true love sometimes means letting go while still holding the memory close. And as the night embraced the village, the man and woman each returned to their separate lives, carrying the lessons, memories, and growth that only such a deep, enduring connection could provide. They knew that life would continue, with its joys and challenges, but they also knew that they had faced the truth of their past together, and that truth would stay with them forever. After spending days together in the village, the man and the woman had reached a quiet understanding. The intensity of their reunion, the shared memories, and the honest conversations had drawn a bridge between their past and present. But deep inside, they both knew that life would soon pull them in separate directions. The man's responsibilities in the city could not be ignored, and she had a life in the village she could not abandon. Despite this, they did not feel sadness as much as they felt clarity. The mornings in the village were calm, filled with the soft sounds of roosters crowing, distant cows lowing, and the wind brushing through the fields. The man would wake early and take long walks, thinking about the lessons he had learned from their conversations. He realized that his life in the city had been focused on achieving, earning, and appearing strong. But strength, he now understood, was not just about wealth or status. It was about being honest, compassionate, and accountable to the people who mattered. She had reminded him of this truth, and he carried it with him silently, like a treasure. She, on the other hand, moved through her daily routine with a quiet strength. She managed her family responsibilities, helped neighbors, and continued her work in the village, but there was a new light in her eyes. The man's return had brought not only memories, but also a reaffirmation of the life she had lived, one built on resilience, patience, and self-respect. She had waited for him once, but she had also grown into someone who could thrive on her own. That independence, combined with the gentle acknowledgement of their past, gave her a sense of peace she had never had before. One afternoon, they sat on a hill overlooking the village, watching the golden sunlight touch the fields and rooftops. The air was cool, filled with the scent of grass and flowers, and for a moment the world felt timeless. He broke the silence. "I keep thinking about the years we lost," he said quietly. "Not because I blame you or myself, but because I now understand how precious those moments were. Life moved so fast and I was too blind to notice the things that mattered most. She looked at him with calm eyes, a small smile on her lips. We did lose time, she admitted. But losing time doesn't erase what we had. Those moments shaped us, gave us memories, and taught us lessons. You needed to go, just as I needed to stay. Life has its way of teaching us through distance and separation. He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep inside him. Meeting you again, it's like finding a part of myself I didn't know I had lost, he said softly. And it's also a reminder that some things are too important to forget, no matter how far life takes you. She reached out and gently touched his hand. And for me, seeing you again is a reminder that people can change, grow, and still remember the bonds that mattered. It's not about going back. It's about moving forward with wisdom and gratitude. They spent the evening walking along the old paths they had once known so well. Every step brought back memories, running through the fields, laughing under the oak tree, sharing food after school. But now the memories were tempered with understanding. They no longer belonged only to the past. They were part of a larger story, one that included growth, resilience, and the acceptance of life's realities. As night fell, the village became quiet. The stars shone above, scattered like diamonds across the dark sky. They sat together on the hill, watching the constellations, and spoke about their dreams, not as children who imagined endless possibilities, but as adults who understood the value of patience, effort, and self-awareness. He spoke of ways he wanted to give back to the village, to help those who had stayed behind, and to create opportunities for others like him who had left in search of a better life. She shared her hopes for the community, for her family, and for herself, dreams rooted in care, resilience, and meaningful living. It was during these moments that they realized the true depth of their connection. It was not the passionate love of youth, nor was it the naive attachment of childhood. It was a deeper, more enduring bond, a bond forged through shared history, mutual respect, and the acknowledgement of each other's growth. They had learned that love could take many forms. It could inspire, heal, and guide, even without possession or reunion. The day came when the man had to leave. He packed his belongings quietly, not rushing, but aware that the moment of parting was near. The woman helped him prepare, not because she wanted him to leave, but because she understood that life demanded it. There was no need for dramatic farewells or tearful goodbyes. Their hearts were aligned in acceptance, not longing. Before he left, they walked to the edge of the village, to the spot where he had first promised to return years ago. He turned to her, his voice steady and sincere. "I cannot undo the past, and I cannot promise what the future holds. But I want you to know that you have changed my life. You have reminded me of what truly matters, and I will carry that with me always." She looked at him, her eyes calm yet warm, filled with understanding. "And you have reminded me that the past is not something to hold with regret. It is something to carry with gratitude. We cannot go back, but we can honor what we shared and move forward with clarity and peace." They stood silently for a few moments, letting the quiet of the village and the cool evening air speak for them. The connection between them was no longer defined by words or promises. It was defined by understanding, respect, and the shared acknowledgement of a journey that had shaped both their lives. Finally, the man turned to leave. She watched him walk away, feeling neither sadness nor emptiness. Instead, she felt a quiet satisfaction, an inner calm that came from knowing that they had faced the past together, and that their shared history had been honored. The boy she had once loved had become a man who could recognize his mistakes, grow from them, and carry forward the lessons with humility and awareness. The man walked through the village one last time, observing the familiar sights. The school, the fields, the marketplace, all of it seemed smaller yet richer, filled with memories and meaning. He realized that leaving did not mean abandoning the past. It meant carrying it with him, integrating it into the person he had become. As he reached the road leading out of the village, he paused and looked back. She stood there, a silent figure framed by the setting sun, strong, independent, and full of quiet dignity. He felt a deep gratitude, not for the chance to rekindle a lost love, but for the opportunity to see her, acknowledge their shared history, and honor the bond that had never truly faded. In the days that followed, life resumed its usual pace. He returned to the city, to work, responsibilities, and the rhythm of urban life. But something within him had shifted. Success no longer meant only wealth or status. It now meant balance, integrity, and the ability to carry the lessons of the past into the present. He remembered her words, her strength, and the peace that came from accepting life's realities. She continued her life in the village, confident in her independence and the choices she had made. She had learned that waiting does not mean stagnation, and that love does not always demand reunion. The bond she had shared with him remained, not as a source of longing, but as a reminder of resilience, understanding, and the power of memory. Months passed, and letters were exchanged occasionally, not filled with longing or regret, but with simple words of acknowledgement and care. Each letter was a reaffirmation of the lessons they had learned, that life moves forward, that people change, and that the past can be honored without being trapped by it. Over time, the man found ways to give back to the village, contributing to local projects, helping children with education, and supporting families in need. Every action carried a piece of the lessons she had taught him about patience, understanding, and the importance of nurturing connections. She continued to thrive in the village, taking pride in her work, her family, and her community. She understood that life's beauty lay in growth, resilience, and the ability to embrace the present without clinging to the past. Their shared history had given her strength, not sorrow, and she carried it with grace. Years later, the man often thought of her, not with longing or regret, but with gratitude. The girl who had waited, who had believed in him, had shaped him in ways no one else could. He had learned that true love does not always mean being together. Sometimes it means acknowledging, understanding, and respecting the journey each person must take. She, too, remembered him from time to time, not with sorrow but with a quiet smile. She knew that the bond they shared had changed both of their lives, leaving an imprint that would remain forever. She had loved, waited, and finally found peace in knowing that the past was honored and the present was embraced. In the end, they remained connected not by proximity, but by memory, respect, and the profound understanding that some bonds are never truly broken. They had grown apart in life, yet grown together in spirit. They had faced regret, misunderstanding, and the passage of time, and had emerged with clarity, peace, and gratitude. And so the village continued to exist quietly, the fields and river unchanged, bearing witness to the story of two people who had once loved as children, grown through life's challenges, and met again as adults who understood that love, in its truest form, is not always possession. It is respect, remembrance, and the courage to honor the journey of another. The man returned to the city carrying lessons, memories, and the quiet strength of someone who had confronted the past and grown from it. The woman continued her life in the village, empowered by independence, wisdom, and the knowledge that some connections endure beyond distance and time. Their story was not one of dramatic reunion or tragic loss. It was a story of life, growth, and understanding, a story that honored the past, accepted the present, and allowed both of them to move forward with peace. The childhood love that had once bound them had transformed into a lifelong lesson, a gentle reminder that some connections, no matter the years or distance, leave an indelible mark on the heart.